Hello everyone, welcome to REST API video tutorial series. In this series, I'm going to cover one very important topic, building mini stack REST API for Angular and Flutter. In this video, I'm going to only focus on how to build your REST API using mini stack. In follow-up videos, I'll show you how to deploy and host this REST API over Firebase hosting. These are the topics I'm going to cover in this video today. I'll show you how to use CORS, how to use environment variables, data validation, how to prevent SQL injections, how to handle errors. I'm also going to cover JWT authentication. I'll show you how to do the entire CRUD operation with MongoDB database using Node.js framework. If you prefer to work with other databases like Firebase, Oracle, or MySQL, etc., I have tons of different examples on my GitHub repository. In this tutorial, I'm going to focus on MongoDB, and I'm going to use a free version of the shared cluster. So let's head out to MongoDB, choose the shared free cluster, and it doesn't matter which provider you use. You can use Azure, Google, or AWS. Make sure that you choose the region depending on your location. All right, and then just click on create cluster, and I'm going to pick all the free options available here. Make sure that you identify yourself not as a robot here. Verify. Once you click on the create cluster, it's going to ask you a username and password. Make sure whatever username and password you choose, please note it down somewhere, because these are the credentials I'm going to use to make connection to my MongoDB later on. Create user. And it's going to take a few minutes. As you can look at the screen, it takes 3 to 5 minutes. All right, as you can see now it's ready. So if you click on that, if you go to your dashboard, you will see the cluster. And inside the collections, you will see your databases. So right now, because I've already been using it, that's how you see the database. You will see a couple of sample databases in addition to the database you are going to create. But if you do not see ERP, do not worry about that. Once you, let me show you the demo, and that's how the ERP has been created. So what you're looking here is the demo of the product. So here I'm going to sign in as my user ID, any user ID and password, doesn't matter. As you can see, it says incorrect password, and if I put the correct password, of course it's going to log me in. And there are a couple of other collections. So for example, check-in information, host information, guest information. This is a very simple application, and you will find the link to my GitHub repository where I have discussed how to build this application. But that's not the point here. In this application, we are only going to focus on creating this REST API. If you are interested to know more about the application, I will also share a link to my YouTube tutorial series where I've discussed how to build this visitor management application. So without any more delay, let's jump into the code. So open your favorite code editor. In my case, I'm using Visual Studio Code, but it's totally up to you, whatever code editor you want to use. So here I'm inside my work in progress directory. I'm going to create a new directory called REST API. mkdir REST API. Let me cd into this REST API folder. And here, first thing I want to check is the Node version. So node-v, here I'm using the latest version of Node. Let me check the npm version as well, npm-v. Next thing I want to do is npm init. What this command will do, it will initialize a brand new project, and it will create a package.json file here. I'm going to choose, just give it a description, and by default I'm going to choose all the default options here. It's totally up to you if you want to, give your name, a different name to your index file, totally up to you. But I'm going to choose all the vanilla that deliver the default options here. All right, so what this command is going to do is going to create a package.json file with the entries, and you can always change it later, okay? So here you go and you will see a file called package.json. Let me make it a little bit bigger. All right. All right, let's do some more house cleaning items here. So at the root of the directory, I want to create a new file called gitignore. Now what this file does, because it's going to exclude all the node modules or the files you do not want to include in your GitHub repository. It has nothing to do with the project, so please feel free to skip this step. Couple of other files I want to create is readme.md file and license file. Again, these are optional files. You do not need this, but it's a good practice to have a license file and readme file. All right, in package.json, as you can see, I have no packages installed here. So this is the time I want to install a couple of packages here. I'm going to install nodemon.env, course, express, JSON web token, body parser, bcrypt, and mongoose. Now don't worry about this, why I'm doing all of these things, because I know beforehand what packages I need, but I don't expect you to know this beforehand. And I'm going to cover all of these things one by one in very much detail. All right, so here I want to go to my package.json file here and change one more thing, start. What this is going to do, whenever I go to my directory and I hit the command say npm start, what it's going to do is going to start that command called nodemon index.js. And nodemon package eventually helps you watch file changes. So for example, anytime you go and make any changes to any file, what nodemon does, it automatically executes npm start command. So you don't have to come back and restart your server all the time. All right, so let's work on .gitignore. Here I'm going to, because as I said earlier, I do not want my node modules and package.json file to be included to GitHub repository. So I'm going to mention those files here, and eventually those will be ignored. Let's put something in the readme.md file. Save it. Same thing with the license. I'm just going to put it as an MIT license here. Save. Now is the fun part. So remember, npm start. So this is my entry point to this application. So index.js is the entry point whenever this package, whenever this REST API will be started. So first thing I'm going to include the Express middleware. And you will see why, because Express middleware, it helps you create those routes for your application. So make sure in package.json file, you have the Express included. Couple of other packages you will need is the body parser, and you will see one by one why I am including those things here. Okay, now let's go initiate those Express packets. So constant app equals to Express. Now I have got an app object or maybe instance of that middleware, and I'm going to say front slash. That means as so for example, your app is serving as localhost. So at the root of the, whenever somebody executes, whenever try to somebody access the URL say localhost, app.use will be start, app.use will be used. Let's include a port number as well. So I'm going to use app.listen, and 3000 is the port number here. All right, let me save this. Now let me go to my command prompt window and start this application. So if I make sure that you are in the directory where your package.json file is located, and just shoot the command npm start, right? Okay, now one thing you might have noticed that I hard-coded the port number value. Now I'm against the idea of hard-coding anything anywhere in an application. So now let's include another package called .env. So what I'm going to do, what this .env file does, you have to first create a new file called .env, and whatever your server-side credential or any information, any hard-coded thing, is always a good idea to put those in .environment file. All right, so .env file, as you see, I include the port number equals to 3000. Now let's include that .env, and in app.listen, all I need to do, instead of hard coding, I will just say process.env and use that variable name what you just mentioned over there. Okay, let me save this. See, and that's what nodemon does. You don't need to go back and restart your server. As you can see, your app is running now. All right, now since our app is running, it's time to work on course. So course is very important aspect of any REST API application. What course does, cross-origin request, it blocks unauthorized access to your REST API. So for example, you do not want every website to access your REST API. You want to restrict it to only certain domains which are your authorized. So let's see how it works. I'm going to include all the course related code inside this block. So first thing I want to do, app is my middleware anyway, app is my Express middleware. So all I'm going to say app.use course. Now this code is not doing much because again it's saying, hey, you know what, any website, as long as any other method, any other HTTP or maybe curl URL is able to access my my REST API. Now we need to block it. So we'll define a constant called allowed origin. So allowed origin is a list of all the websites which are only allowed to access your REST API. So for example, you host your website at some say localhost 4200, localhost 8000. Again, these are the development server. You want to put the actual website which will be accessing your REST API. So any example domain.com. All right, so this will be, you can put as many as you want, separated by a comma. And as you can see, I am taking this constant allowed origin and I'm going to read that from environment file and split it using a comma separator. All right, and then all you need to do app.use course, and here inside that course you want to call it a function origin and callback. All I'm going to do, I'm going to check if the application or the website which is calling this REST API does belongs to that allowed origin or not. That's how you control who can or cannot access your REST API. All right, so just be careful. One thing I want to call out, if you are accessing this, if you have a mobile app who's making a curl request, then the different rules apply. It's not that as simple as using another website. So here, okay, let's go focus on the website portion only. Here all I'm saying allowed origin, and as long as the website which is calling this REST API belongs to that one of those allowed origin list what I have just created in environment file, it is okay. Otherwise, you just throw back an error saying, you know, course policy does not allow this REST API to be accessible from your website. All right, that's what it does. So again, one thing I want to mention here, you use only one of these things, then portion here. For the development purpose, I'm going to comment it out. But once you go to the production, please do not forget to uncomment this and comment the other one. Otherwise, this code, what it's going to do is going to allow every freaking website from your from internet to access your REST API, which obviously you do not want. So this is the portion you want in your the long block of the code. That's one you want to retain when you go to the production. All right, now it's time to work on the data validation. The purpose of these validations are, you want to validate any data coming from the client side. So for example, a lot of time what happens, people create fake client and they try to put, they try to hide SQLs. People call it a SQL injection, and they'll try to hack your website. To prevent that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a file called validate.js. Again, I'm going to show you one very simple example here how I'm doing it. It depends on your application, and please be creative and you want to put as much data validation as you want. All right, so I have created a blank file called validate.json file here. Now again, any input coming from the website, if you pay attention and look at the meta tag, there are two different types. So like JSON parser and URL encoded parser here. Okay, and I'm going to show you only one method here. So here JSON parser, but again, whatever the, you have to take the body, that's where the body parser packages comes into the picture. You have to first, you have to unencrypt that, you have to understand that what format you are reading. Okay, all right. Then next thing I want you to do, any listener, any route defined in your Express middleware. So for example, somebody is trying to access your sign up route. So there, what you want to do, so whenever app.post and somebody is trying to access the sign up, you create a function which takes a request and sends a response back. And then you take all the request and figure it out. You check you do some minimum checks. So for example, if somebody is sending an input null data, or if you can always do that at the client side, but never rely on the client side fully 100%. So here you want to check all the input data validation, and you can write as many input data quality function as you want. Again, I'm showing you one very simple example here. There's one more method is check the JWT token. Again, this method doesn't apply here, but let's just take an example saying whatever method is coming, you want to make sure that the person who is trying to access that has the proper authentication or not. All right, and then you create the user. Here, these two methods, JWT token and create user does apply. JWT token does not apply because user has not signed up yet. All right, let's copy these three functions and put those in your validate.js file here. Input data null, input data quality, and JWT token. These are the three functions we are going to create here. T token. Okay, now let's go first what we want to do. We want to include the JSON web token package here. Now make sure, go back to your package.json file, make sure that this package is included, which we did already. Okay, now what we want to do here, we want to create a variable here. Now this is the variable, this is kind of an interface, so whenever I'm going to send any results back to our website, so this REST API is going to shoot, is going to throw the results in this format. So it's not, other than data itself, you want to send a couple of other things. For example, if there is any error, then you want to send that message. What is the exact error your server is facing? So here you will see that, once you see that in action, you will understand a little bit more. So first, check data null. So for example, check the data null, and here I'm going to create a function which take a request and send the response back. All I need to do, if request is equal to null, we have to figure it out. Request.body, there is nothing. Then we want to throw it out that, we got the null request, so we want to send it back, hey, the null results are not applicable. So here what we want to do is see that very clearly, instead of throwing the server kind of an error which is going to be an abrupt JavaScript error, we want to put something nice. So we will say, this result.message, we will say no body checking, something is not valid here. Okay, so for example, here I'm manipulating that error message here, and this is the error what your user will see. All right, so same thing, data quality. If the input email or input password is not valid, you want to figure it, you want to send some user-friendly error so that user will understand what he did wrong. Okay, now let's go create the third function, JWT token. This is very important. So this is only applicable when user is authorized or not. So what you want to do, every request coming from your source, it will always include that token into the header. So what you want to do, you want to take that request, access his headers, and take that token. And then if you figure it out, if there is no token, then you want to immediately throw that error, hey, there is no token. And then you throw the 400 error. And if there is a token, then you want to verify that. To verify that JWT token, you have to look into that JSON Web Token NPM package, and they give you a method called jwt.verify. Now it takes a secret. So for example, I'm going to environment file here. I'm going to put a JWT secret. This is kind of a, it's not actually a password. It's an encryption method. So here you want to decode that. So whenever the JWT token comes from the server, it's always in some form of a string which is not human readable. So what you want to do, you want to take that string, parse it out, figure it out. So the way JWT tokens are generated using this super secret password, there's an encrypted JWT token is issued, which you only can be decrypted at the server side itself. All right, so that's how the JWT token works. So this looks pretty good. Now we are done with the JWT token. Now it's time to connect directly to the database and make some CRUD operations. All right, so for the CRUD operations, let me just copy these things here and create a couple of more routes. So for example, instead of sign up, I want to create a login, and I'm going to change the DB functions method here. So this, I'm going to create a new method called login user. And while I'm here, let me create one more route here, which is settings. So only user who, suppose you want to have users update their credentials. So I will call a method called update user. And here I will need JWT token, because recall that only user who have already logged in, that means they already have a valid JWT token, they are the one who are authorized to update their settings. All right, so now let's go try connecting to the database. So here, as you can see, I'm going to put all the database related code into one folder. Let's create a folder called models. And inside that models folder, I'm going to create a couple of files here. Connector.js, dbconnection.js, and I'm going to create one more file called user.js. So good thing, the way MongoDB and Mongoose works, and any application, it doesn't matter, it's always a good practice to create a data model, because that's your entry point. The stronger data model you have in your code, better your code is going to be. Okay, so here what I'm going to do first, let me make sure in package.json file that I have all this, at least I have already imported the Mongoose here. So I have Mongoose connection here. Here I'm going to make a connection to the database. So a schema, I'm going to first include the Mongoose package and define a schema here. Then I'm going to create a user schema. Now inside that user schema, because user schema, there are only two fields I'm capturing. It could be any number of fields, but in my application I have only two fields, email and password. And here I'm going to export that schema here called user. All right, So this is my data model. Okay, I have a data model called user, which has two fields, email and password, input email and input password more precisely. All right, so here what I want to do next is connector. Let's go to connector.js. Here I want to make a connection to the actual database. So remember, at this point, it expects your application REST API expect that you already have a valid MongoDB connections already defined over there. Okay, so here I'm going to put Mongoose, all the Mongoose related code here inside this code block. Again, I'm going to import Mongoose package here, and then let's get those MongoDB URL credential from your environment file here. Again, I'm not hard coding those things here. I'm going to put all those inside my environment file here. So this is my MongoDB. Make sure that you have a valid user ID and password credentials which can access your MongoDB. Again, if you do not have this, it's not going to connect. So make sure you go back to your MongoDB website, create a valid username and password, and get that connection string. Then all you need to do is mongoose.connect and and pass those credentials here, and make sure that you test the connection here. So if there is an error, you want to log out that error into the console. If not, then you just want to put a message here saying, it's connected. Once I'm going to say open, and I will say console.log. I'll say connected to MongoDB ERP database. All right, so this is how my connection, and I'm going to export this connection here. Okay, Mongoose. Now let's go back to our connector.js file here. Now here I already have at this point I have a valid connection defined here. Okay, so I need to make sure that I'm connected to the MongoDB database. I have a valid JWT token. Then you call that user schema what you just created here. You will also need one more package called bcrypt. I will come back to in a minute like what bcrypt does. Bcrypt is only applicable to the login and user ID and password. So here let's go create the same variable here. Recall that I created a variable called result not found. I'm going to create two different variables here, result not found or result found. Result not found, that means if there is an error, you want to throw that nice error to the user, and if data is found, then you just want to say error code. That means one means there is no error, right? And then you want to say your message is operation successful, right? And then if convenient, if possible, always try to pass the row count as well. Again, these are optional. You may not see the need, but this is the a better way of doing the things, the same things. Okay. Again, these are just like the terminology. If you want to follow your own standard practice, please feel free to do that, and make sure if you want to update this piece, please feel free to do that as well. So here I'm going to create a couple of functions here. Create user. This is my sign up URL is calling that. So again, what I want to do here, as a part of create user, because again, it's bad idea to store the original password in your database. So always use the bcrypt function. All it does, it takes your password, it uses the salt round, and it encrypts the password, and then that's what you store in your database. So the whole idea is never store the actual password in your database. If your database is salted, that means like if you create a backup of your database, somebody else can access your database, they should not be able to read the user ID and passwords. All right. So again, and then what you want to do, you want to figure it out if the user already exists or not. If the user already exists, then take that variable what we define user results not found, and here you change the error message. So everything else will remain the same, but here you want to pass a message saying user email is already taken. Okay, this is the terminology. Otherwise, your user will never know what's wrong. What did they do wrong? So always please try to make sure that you use this kind of error validation, and always try to be send those friendly messages. It's going to help you as a developer and help your users as well. Okay, if not everything is all well, then all you need to do, create a new schema. Create an instance of the schema what you define user, and all you need to do user.save. That's it. So, and then you want to pass a message that results was successful operation. All right, so it looks pretty good now. Same thing, the same terminology. Rest of the things are very, very easy. You can create as many methods as you want. Similarly, login user or maybe update user, same thing. So login user, I'm going to find that user first. Okay. If not found, then you want to say, sometimes it happens user put the wrong user ID and wrong password, and they never know that this was the wrong user ID. So that's how you want to say, hey, not only you're checking the password, you're also checking the user ID exists or not. All right. And if result is successful, so please, you can put more validation here, more logic here, more friendly error messages here. It's totally up to you how do you design that. Okay. And once you design, please pay attention to this part. That's how you create the JWT token. So here earlier I discussed about the JWT token. Once the user is authorized, you create an encrypted JWT token, which only you can decrypt at the server side. And here you can manipulate that this JWT token is going to expire in 30 days, right? So after the user is successfully logged in, you throw back a token. And it's a user's responsibility at the front end as a front end developer that you take the token, and for every subsequent update request collaboration, you pass the token to the REST API. All right, so this looks pretty good now. I think that's all I had to share. Again, depending on that, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please fork this GitHub repository and open an issue log, and I'll be happy to help you out. Thank you very much.